Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell and welcome to Spirituality TV. Today we are celebrating our 10th year, beginning of our 10th year for spirituality. It's hard to believe, been doing this every week for 10 years. So in honor of that, and in honor of this 10-year anniversary, I've invited my sister, Nancy O'Donnell Cook, to come and join me and to talk about a little of our early family life and how our spiritual life has developed. So welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Brother Bill. I'm happy to be here with you today, and it's an honor to be here in Santa Fe, especially on the occasion of your 10th anniversary of your show. I've seen a few clips from the past, and today we've been talking a lot about our mother and tried to tune into some of our family history and thoughts that we might want to share and that might have some relevance to other people, and hearing about how our spirituality developed and maybe how you got here today.
Yeah, it's important to remember that we're not saints, we're not perfect, and a lot of people think, well, you've got to be perfect, you have to be a good person. Well, we try to be good people, but we practice a religious practice to enhance our spiritual life, and this show is dedicated to encouraging you at home in your spiritual life. And we don't tell you what's the right thing for you to do, but we encourage you in your spiritual life. So we hope that this will be of some value to you. And we're going to ask you to watch the credits at the end. If there's anything that you like this kind of program, we'd like to hear from you, and let us know if we're being of value or have been of value over these 10 years in your life. So Nancy, tell us a little bit about what you remember growing up and those kinds of things that lead you to where you are now.
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is that I'm the fourth of 5 children, the only girl, and I've had a very privileged part in the family, being that I was the only one that had her own room. That was the treasure that my brothers were all jealous of. All 4 of them had to share a bedroom. And of course, we were all baptized and raised in the Catholic Church. Our mother was a convert later on in our life, and leading quickly into the spirituality of it all. I was very much aware that she was sending us off to church with other people to fulfill her commitment that she made. And then she had an awakening in her own spirit. About the time I was in 5th grade, she then became a Catholic and had all the sacraments rather quickly in 1 year. And I was actually taken out of grade school with my younger brother to be the witnesses at her wedding, which was done rather impromptu in front of the altar.
You said her wedding, but you meant her...
It was actually her wedding. She was actually married in the church at that time. The wedding that she had had in the first place, because she wasn't Catholic in the years during the war. She was married in the rectory and not in the church. So this was sort of the blessing of the grace of being a Catholic and in the church. It was quite unusual, and I had to tell everyone when I came back to class where I was and why. On a lighter note, I do remember that she was hungry to know everything about the faith. It became very alive for her that year. She was baptized, had all the sacraments in the church, confirmation. Out of order, she had First Communion, confirmation, and then the matrimony. So she had all the sacraments that year. But she was seeking and learning, and we'd talk about it because I too was learning. 5th grade, I still had a lot to know about the rules and the history and the lives of the saints, which to this day is the anchor of my faith. I, as a human being, recognized how weak I was in trying to follow the rules that were ordained for me, and how I had to perform as a good Christian, and realizing that, oftentimes it was hard to make myself be in that mold. And I would go to confession and confess my sins, and I was supposed to have the strength and the grace to overcome them, and I found that I was struggling, but I was being told that everyone was. And then I was reading the lives of the saints, and I was so impressed, and I was so confused. How could anyone ever arise to the level of sanctity and spirituality that they could overcome themselves and then just fly in the spiritual realm and just be able to conquer themselves and do great things? So I found that I had been fooling myself and thinking that I wasn't perfect and that I couldn't be like Jesus, even though I was supposed to take up my little crosses and follow him. But when I read the lives of the saints, I could no longer say that. If other human beings had conquered themselves, then I was being challenged. It helped me go to a deeper level. It helped me become certainly a better person, because then I recognized, certainly from the life of St. Therese, the little flower, it was the little things that made you. And then yes, every one of us could be the saint that we were all called to be, that seemed so distant when I was young and so real as an adult. And I learned something new every day. I learned something about faith from other people. I have such an ecumenical heart about me of respect of everyone's spirituality, because Jesus has taught me himself. Deep within my heart, the Lord talks to me. My inner voice has become his channel of grace, of information. Instead of idly thinking about things myself and in my own head, I now entertain the thought that it's him speaking through me, through that channel of my inner voice. And he's my companion. I walk with him daily, and I walk with him minute by minute. He's always comforting me and calming me and making me feel loved, which is the secret of all faith, is everyone is seeking for that presence of God in our life, which is remarkably one simple word: love. And when you have peace, you have that love. And his presence is always denoted by peace. So that when you're around people that make you feel peaceful, or situations where you're at peace with, you can feel God's presence, no matter who and what you are and where you are. Now, I've really moved far away from my mother and her development. Today I want to come back to my mother and speak mostly to her, because our audience, I presume, will be mostly our family. And we have a big family, and we all are very unique in our own way and in our own spiritual paths. We are journeying all to the end, which is, we hope, heaven. It's our belief there is a heaven and a hell, and we all want the best for everyone that we love and people that we don't even know. The thought of hell is just, I don't know the word. I don't like to think of it, because I think of it as being something that I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to experience or to have to face. And so heaven is what we hope for in the end. Now I guess I'm drawing this attention to my own life, which is natural for me, because that's the life I live. And I want to share with the audience that I'm a nurse, a registered nurse who has trained 27 years ago to do the work that I do today. I've been in the same place for that long. I work as a critical care nurse, and quite honestly, if you do anything long enough, you get good at it. But God gives us each talents and certain gifts to lead into life what he wants you to do. And he's given me a lot of gifts of compassion, and he's taught me unconditional love. I'm not very good at it all the time, but I'm always motivated by it, because his presence is love. And what I have, I want to share. And I've had lots of traumatic experiences in my life, and I've been abused greatly by people who should be the ones who love me. And out of it, I have come to the conclusion that I can't change what's happened to me, but I can change what happens to others, which motivates me in a message of compassion to all that God brings to me. And that's the secret. I expect that everyone that God puts in my circle is someone that he brings to me personally to give to them the love that they haven't experienced in whatever little way I can offer. And that's the gift that I give in my work setting. I have the ability to work with difficult families. I don't take any credit for it. It's a natural, innate gift that he's given to me, that I can draw them together and help them to communicate with each other. And I'm motivated out of individual love for him, for Jesus, because he has shown me that he would die for each and every one of us all over again. If it were just one person that he could save, he would do it. So certainly in the crosses that I carry, I want to follow him in that message. And I want to die to self, making myself inconvenienced, to put myself out, to offer to them the love that I receive unconditionally. And that is the greatest accomplishment. I have such a sense of really doing, of purpose, sense of purpose, that I feel that I was created for this role. And it makes me feel great in my own little way, because I'm doing what God wants me to do. The other gifts that I have are that work well in my environment is that I work well as a team player. And I draw my group in because I'm their charge nurse.
How many
and I
nurses do
lead.
you usually work with?
Well, we're a team of 6 usually as a rule because there's 12 beds, and in critical care you are assigned no more than 2 patients, ideally. We have a tight budget in our hospital for whatever reason. I'm not sure, and I don't want to go there. But the charge nurse should be out of the count, but I'm not. So I'm asked to do the more heroic role of doing 2 patients, taking the lead, seeing that clerical work is done, answering the phone, being available for family intervention when it's necessary, and doing my part.
And this is at night, too. You do the night shift.
Well, we call it the swing shift.
Swing
It's
shift.
the 3 to midnight crew. We get out a little earlier, but usually I'm not out of there before midnight because I can't get to my paperwork until after I'm relieved.
What's it like? Give the feel, because in critical care, people are dying all the time there. That's where they come often to die. And what's it like from a spiritual perspective to be with people who are dying?
Well, I first had to face my own thoughts about my own death. And I did that very early on in training when I was placed as a very young girl in a cancer ward where there were young people dying. And this young man was dying, 26-year-old of some kind of bone cancer. And that was 30 years ago, and I still remember the way he cried. It was just a high-pitched, baby-like cry, and it was unnerving at least, and I was just clear that I wasn't going to be able to make it if I didn't come to terms with this. And I did some serious soul searching, and I realized that, yes, I did believe. At that point, I had to be challenged in my faith that I did believe in heaven and hell. I did believe that there was life after death, that it didn't end, and I had to come to grips with my faith before I could move forward. And I used to feel like I was an instrument of their torture when I'd have to try and force their bodies to respond to our treatments to just continue when I knew that it was just time that we were buying and time that would be experiencing pain. I've come full circle in that awareness when I came to the point of recognizing even more so how much I longed to go to heaven. Then it was easier for me to allow them, my patients, whom I'm supposed to keep alive, and I'm supposed to torture them with agony, really, because it isn't fun to be a patient when you're that critically ill and everything everyone's doing hurts. To try to make you better, it's hard to come into that pain every day and embrace their pain with them and give them hope.
What was it like in your case, Nancy? Because you've endured personal pain too. You had 4 brothers that we didn't brutalize you, but
You came close.
we were, shall we say, as charitable as I would like to have been. But also in your own life, you've been a wife and a mother of 4 kids. You've experienced the personal heartache of having your daughter Emily pass away before the age of 3, then separation from your husband, and then he later died, and then raising your remaining 3 kids. So how has that affected you in your life and in your spiritual life?
Well, that's my greatest amazing gift from God, was the grace that he gave me to endure that. And when I was a teenager, he gave me that gift. When I prayed fervently to find direction in my life, I was given the gift of a spiritual backbone. And the words that came to me as I prayed and meditated on a senior retreat in high school for direction was that I would be the backbone of something great, of nothing that I would do of my own merit, but something that I would do for a spouse, a child, a cause. And that I was told, and I experienced it, that I would lose my faith, but that I would regain it greater than before. All that came to fruition, and that backbone that God gave me was the courage, supernatural courage and grace to survive the path that I would choose for myself. And it was truly my choice to marry the wrong person and to deal with his alcoholism, to suffer the consequences of having had 2 abortions, neither of which I would ever recommend or offer to anyone else to do that course. But respect for life issues are something that I work on today. I'm very faithful to the Respect for Life movement and to counseling women who need help, and I'm always ready for God's challenges to help more in that arena. That's the new facet of my life spiritually. But back to the spirituality of surviving, God showed me his presence in my day in and day out, dealing with the demons of alcoholism. Quite honestly, my husband showed signs of possession. He was truly demonic in the facet of torment that he offered to me. I had no choice but to pray daily, which didn't hurt me a minute, because in the grace of prayer came the strength that I needed to endure. I recognized this was my Calvary. It was very symbolic of doing something for Christ. I recognized that I was surviving only by grace. I had nowhere else to go. I couldn't afford to be on my own, nor with his unstable nature would it be safe for me to be on my own. It wasn't safe to bring my children and myself to my parents' house to put them in jeopardy. And with that, I trusted God with all my heart that he would heal and restore my husband. And that was how I got through day in and day out. And in the course of this, one of our children died suddenly. It was unexpected. She had a brain tumor that she was born with, and it went undiagnosed. And as a nurse, I knew her symptoms. That was the worst case scenario. It was a brain tumor. And yet I took comfort when no one found anything. But she progressed in this illness to the point of a sudden death. And it was just numbing, just devastating to have to face the loss of a child. It just didn't seem, it just didn't seem possible. And yet it was very real. And I went through my darkest hour with I was just feeling total grief, and yet I had God's peace in the middle of it all. It was a very wonderful peace where I had joy and laughter, and it just seemed so wrong to me, but I then recognized it was the best God had to offer, and it would be enough, and it was enough. And he gave me strength to be strong for everyone. I can honestly say I was never a strong person before, but after witnessing that in my own life and going through it, I never doubted that God wasn't there for me. It was very mystical, and it gave me the knowledge and the grace to just go forward and trust him in every way, and I have.
Listen, if you just joined us, we're having our 10th anniversary show here at Spirituality TV, and I invited my sister Nancy to come and share, and she's been sharing her life with her. And she's also, we're honoring our mother because she's wearing our late mother's sweater. I think it looks better on you than it did on Mom, but I'm glad you're here for that and sharing a lot of your work. So if you're having troubles in your life, we want to encourage you, because both Nancy and I, you're going to hit bottom at some point. You're going to have negative things happen to you, and where are you going to go with it? What we've found in our lives is that if you take it to prayer, if you ask God for help, God will help you. And it doesn't matter what tradition you're a part of. We now have de facto freedom of religion, and we encourage you to explore the different religions to help you in your spiritual life. Because it's not us to say, well, you're in the wrong religion. Hopefully it's the right religion for you. Make the most of it. If not, then look around and find out. For both of us, we both left the Catholic Church at one time and studied other things, but found our way back, and it's been a blessing for us, and we're happy in that regard. So we encourage you in your spiritual life to give it a thought. Is your life going as well as you would like? Do you need help? Well, supernatural help is available, isn't it, Nancy?
Yes, it is, Bill.
Tell us a little more about your experience with supernatural help.
Oh, gosh.
The power of prayer.
I'm going blank right now, Bill.
Okay.
I'm not sure where to start because I have so many stories. I share them whenever I have an opportunity because they had such meaning for me. I think the greatest gift I ever received was the gift for unconditional love from my mother-in-law. She was a Native American, actually Mexican by background, born in San Antonio, Texas, to a very poor family during the time of the Depression, which shaped and molded her. Many injustices she suffered, and she had a cursing streak that would have just fit with anybody that you know who curses, and she was just the bane of my existence. I never hated anyone in my life, and I was embarrassed that I actually hated this woman who came to my house daily to tell me how to raise my kids and how to do whatever. And I had to listen to her politics about how the poor Indians in this country were mistreated, which I would never refute, but I just didn't want to listen to it every day. And I had been prayed over to get the gift of tongues the night before from my charismatic prayer group, and it didn't happen, but I felt such tremendous peace and grace in God's presence that I walked away from that just knowing I'd been touched. And then I braced myself the next morning as she just predictably came to my door, and that was an amazing thing. I plastered a grin on my face because I didn't want her ever to know. I was embarrassed to admit that I hated her. And I opened the door and I greeted her, and with it came the boom, the flood of the Holy Spirit from the top of my head through the tip of my toes, with this peace, joy, and love, unconditional love, like a mother loves a child for her, which made it work. I had been praying so hard in this bad situation I found myself in with my husband and my mother-in-law, and God couldn't get to them because we all have free will to choose. And yet I was the one open, and he got to me, and he made it work. I was then able to, I guess, endure, but endure it with an attitude that it was okay, like a parent would endure children and their misbehavior. And it worked. I mean, she loved me like a mother loves a child. I really just know that it was God's grace and mercy that just kept flowing in our life. She became my surrogate mother when my own passed away, and I'd always been close to her. And she became frail and demented, and I was the daughter she never had. And it was so joyful that here she's donated one of her houses to me so that I can help continue to raise my children. That's just how God works. When it was his gift, I didn't ask for it. Again, it was like a joke in a way to me that, you know, they're the ones who need it, but I don't care, it works, and I'm so pleased. God knows better. He knows what we need more than we could ever imagine.
It's amazing. So I hope your children are listening, Melissa, Stephanie, and Ian, and all your brothers and sisters, for this value in your life. Because if you, and anyone else who's listening, if you have not given time for your spiritual life, you know, we have to give time to our work life, to our family life, to our civic life, but we also need to give time to our spiritual life. And it's so easy. I mean, you can literally just, you know, say the Lord's Prayer or say some prayer, meditate, get started somewhere, and take advantage of the things that are available to you. It's true, isn't it? I mean, I know I go to the Sacrament of Reconciliation at least once or twice a month, and it feels to me like I've taken a spiritual shower. It's therapeutic. I come out relieved of any and all anxiety, come out refreshed. And when I fail again, or I'm less than charitable with myself or others or some other thing, I just go back. And it's free. Hard to imagine that something so good can be free.
Well, I went on a religious pilgrimage a few years ago to the holy site of Medjugorje. And it was quite an experience. I'd been reading about it. I'd been challenged by a coworker to learn more about my faith because, in truth, I hadn't learned enough to really defend it. I started reading and heard about this apparition of development over in Medjugorje, and I really wanted to go, but I wasn't planning on it. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I don't really even know how it happened, but my youngest daughter agreed to go with me because she wouldn't have been one I could have left alone at that time. And it was very clear to me that I wasn't being called to come, that I'd had a dream, and Blessed Mother was calling my youngest to come with me, or rather to go, and I was to take her. So she did come with me, and it was such an experience of grace. And there's one event that we practice in our faith in the Catholic Church, and that's the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. And that's our belief that Jesus is not only present in the host in spirit, but he physically is, shrouded by the physical presence of the bread. He also is physical. We can't see it because our spiritual eyes are not open to see him in his physical presence. It's a mystery of grace that we accept and receive. And yet we have found so very powerful for those like myself who have actually practiced that. I'm part of an adoration team in my parish, and it was in Medjugorje that became clear to me that God wanted me to be involved.
Tell the folks at home what's happening in Medjugorje.
In Medjugorje, back in 1981, I think it was June 25th, Blessed Mother appeared on a hillside to 6 local village children. I think they were like teenagers and younger at the time. And there was this apparition, kind of a ghost-like, spirit-like form that looked like Blessed Mother that was on the hill beckoning to them. And they were quite surprised. The climate in Medjugorje at the time, they were a communist regime that was very oppressed. The Christians were very tormented, and they had very little to go on. The men had to leave the valley to work in the large cities and send money home so their families could survive. They worked and lived off the land. This particular group of kids had been shepherding, I believe, their sheep or their goats or their livestock anyway, and they were just on their way home. Well, they did actually go and follow her beckon, and they came upon her, this vision, this full life vision of Blessed Mother, and she started talking to them and inviting them to come back. There's a movie called Gospa that was made by this, made about this original apparition that Martin Sheen, I believe, played the priest of their local parish, and it's a great story for any of you who are interested in hearing about it. You could learn more from that movie, Gospa. But back to the story, she's been appearing daily to those same children who are now adults in Medjugorje, and wherever they are, she appears to them at the same time of day, whatever time zone they're in. And the messages are for peace and for prayer, and that her wish is that all that come with that openness and spirit to pray and to experience whatever there is there to encounter in Medjugorje, and it's kind of mystical, and everyone has similar and everyone has different experiences. But I had my experience, and it was just very overjoying to be there, and then to be in an open arena of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament with 10,000 people. I felt the presence of God so thick and so heavy, it was like a blanketing cloud where I couldn't breathe through this cloud. I felt so humbled and so unworthy that I can only guess that I was experiencing God's presence, not in anything that I saw, but in what I felt. I recognized how unworthy as a human being I am without His grace. I could never encounter that spiritual domain of God's true presence. And I was hearing in my head that God wanted me to go home, and He wanted me to be involved in this ministry. So I'm trying to honor that call, and I have been very active in my church in that regard.
So we only have a couple minutes left, Nancy. How did it affect you and Stephanie?
Well, Stephanie, when she came home, my daughter had a hard time in high school. She just had a lot of emotional swings back and forth, and she was so depressed, and she couldn't function too well without help. And she needed to experience God's healing presence. That we even did homework in Adoration Chapel with her. That was the only place that she found His presence and peace that could change things for her life.
It's a great place to do your homework, I think about it.
It worked very well for her.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've run out of time. We only got a couple minutes left, so I just hope that something that Nancy has shared with you is something of value in your life. And it's been a pleasure for me to have you here, Nancy, and share. As you can tell, I mean, Nancy's got the rock of faith that I look up to and that I admire. So I keep up the good work, and I hope your children are watching. I hope they're paying attention. This will be a little treasure for them to have. And I know that on behalf of our brothers Dick, Jim, and Tom, I want to thank you for being here and all the stuff that you did for our parents as they were dying, and your mother-in-law, all those people that you've been there for. So God has really blessed you and used you in your life. Any final comment?
No,
for people out there, any recommendations you have for them?
No, I just would ask each of them to just pick up their cross and follow Jesus, because He tells us that His yoke is easy and His burden is light. And I found it to be very true. And I know He's calling each and every one of you. So please listen.
Okay, great. Well, it's been a thrill and a treat, Nancy. So please come back again. Don't wait 10 years. Come back anytime. So I hope this has been some value in your life. It certainly has been for me. My sister's an inspiration for me and encourages me in my faith. So I hope that's true. So I want to encourage you, seek out, seek, knock, and ask. If you don't seek, you're not going to find. If you don't knock, it won't be open. If you don't ask, you won't receive. So you have 3 duties to do, or nothing's going to happen in your spiritual life. So I hope you'll do that. So on behalf of my sister Nancy, for Connie and Alexandra and Richie and our director Marshall, I want to thank you for viewing. And stay tuned next week at this time for another show on spirituality.